This is Brenna Quigley, your personal geologist and terroir guide. Join me on a road trip through the geologic history of your favorite wine regions around the world. This is Roadside Terroir. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Roadside Terroirs Season 3, Farming for Terroir. This multi-part episode series on the intricacies of farming philosophies is brought to you thanks to the wonderful team at Becky Wasserman and Company. Thank you for trusting us with this important topic and for all you do to promote responsible farming throughout our industry. From the outset of Season 3, we knew we wanted to break down the intricacies of the most important farming methods practiced in viticulture today. As we set out to do this, it quickly snowballed into months of research, fact-checking, and a whole slew of commentary from industry experts, friends, colleagues, and mentors. Today, we're looking at organic practices by tracing the history of farming back to its roots. In addition to our expert commentary, we utilized many resources for this episode, but the two main sources we've leaned on are Jamie Good's The New Viticulture and The Wines of California by Elaine Chacon-Brown. We'll provide a full list of references and citations in the show notes and on the episode 5 page of our website, roadsideterroir.com. Part of the audio for this episode was recorded during our time spent in the Rhone Valley this past summer with an amazing group of roadside insiders, hosted by the fabulous team at Oatcoat. Thank you for all you do, Loic, Milena, Ali, Julia, and the whole team. If you're interested in becoming a roadside insider and joining us on these travels and much, much more, check out our website, roadsideterroir.com, or shoot us a message directly at contact@roadsideterroir.com. As always, don't drink and drive, and remember to keep your eyes on the road. This episode probably contains explicit language.
Sorry.
It kind of looks like a tavern.
Duck, duck.
You need cold beers in there.
Yeah.
Fresh white.
Yes.
No, it was the ancient cellar of Trolla. I don't know if you know this name. Mm-hmm. It was quite famous, especially in the US, maybe more than in France. And so it was its vineyards, and we bought it and rented a few years ago.
Today, we have come to learn about the philosophy of organic farming from one of the Northern Rhone's most beloved farmers, Jean Gonon of Domaine Pierre Gonon in Saint-Joseph.
And it's part of the oldest vines we have. They have been planted after the First War, so 1920. They are more or less 100. Not all the plants, but...
It's a steamy afternoon in June, and we've arrived just as his team wraps up a long day in the vines. Jean is in dirty cut-off jeans and a straw hat, showing all of the signs of a long day working in the sun. He is clearly tired, yet still beaming with pride as he guides us around his precious 100-year-old vines in Saint-Jean-de-Mouzol in the historic heart of the Saint-Joseph appellation.
That's a wall.
Yeah, there is walls, so you have to jump the walls with
Jean and his brother Pierre are considered to be some of the last remaining traditionalists in the Northern Rhone. They're not interested in following trends and are instead deeply committed to the serious, hard work that it takes to care for vines. In episode 3, we began our discussion of farming philosophies by learning how to look beyond the dogmatism sometimes used when discussing how people can or should farm, and how to look at the guiding principles behind all of the little decisions that go into farming vines to produce high-quality, terroir-driven wines. And there's perhaps no better place to capture the purity of intention behind the organic farming philosophy than here with Jean Gonon. Even today, organic, biodynamic, and regenerative farming are all often described as alternative methods to conventional farming. In order to capture the significance of the organic movement, we need to take a moment to understand the convention that triggered it. Prior to World War I, all farming was probably organic, at least by today's standards. But farms also looked a lot different back then. Especially in countries like France, inheritance laws had led to a patchwork of fragmented farmland. People were still tending to their horses, oxen, and cows at sunrise before heading into the vines, and most farmers grew a variety of crops for sustenance. The work was hard. Tilling and hoeing was done by hand or with the help of animals. Wooden carts carried harvested grapes back to the cellar over simple dirt roads, and there was little glamour or profit to show for it. Many farmers chose to leave the countryside in search of more modern and profitable work. You might recall from episode 1 how Michelle and David Chappelle are currently discovering and re-implementing some of these farming techniques in Beaujolais.
So we farm in a context of agroecology, where we are trying to minimize our own inputs and let nature kind of work itself out.
Mm-hmm. And where and when did you learn about that approach?
Well, there's nothing new about it. It's literally just farming like the old school. And we can even do more. You know, the old school people, they put peas in their vines because it brought nitrogen, of course. Mm-hmm. But it also, they can harvest them and they can eat it. There's like a lot of things that people did that were just really practical, which it seemed like discoveries to us, but it just makes sense, you know? And of course, they could be modified for like current times. But all those things existed. We're not reinventing anything. We're just asking more questions and figuring out what makes sense for our vines.
Judging from a manual on viticulture from the early 1840s, producers were mostly concerned with pruning, green cover, tilling and mulching, canopy management, hoeing, and composting. They were aware of soil health to some capacity and understood the importance of soil aeration and water retention related to soil compaction. In the 19th century, the main way to deal with weeds was manual labor, specifically tilling and hoeing the soils, often with the help of horses or oxen. The first widespread chemical herbicides were sulfuric acid, as well as sulfates and nitrates of copper and iron, which didn't come onto the scene until the late 1800s in France. Overall, there was much less concern about disease pressure. This is likely due in part to the overall health of the farms, and because some of the main fungal diseases, such as powdery and downy mildew, were not introduced to Europe until the mid to late 19th century. The main solution at the time was a spray called the Bordeaux mixture, which consists of lime, copper sulfate, and water. This became one of the earliest widespread fungicides and is generally still permitted in organic farming today. Major changes in agriculture following World War II shaped what we now know as conventional farming. One of the most impactful changes was the invention of industrial fertilizer, which we mentioned in episode 1. Naturally occurring bioavailable nitrogen is typically the limiting nutrient in most agricultural systems, meaning a crop can only produce as much yield as there is available nitrogen. And if we're going to remove nitrogen from the system, by say harvesting fruit, it needs to be returned somehow in order to continue producing. And it needs to be fixed into a form that is actually available to the plant, a job typically accomplished by soil bacteria. In 1913, the Haber-Bosch process and the resulting quote-unquote green revolution made cheap nitrogen available for the first time ever and nearly doubled the global population that agriculture can support. As you can imagine, this rapid boom caused a lot of issues, including nitrogen eutrophication and pollution from agricultural runoff, depleted topsoils, and more. Plus, more crops meant more work to farm them. The introduction of the tractor dramatically changed how both food crops and vineyards would be planted and farmed in order to allow for this advanced mechanization. As more and more land was planted to monocultures, where a plot of land is dedicated to just one resource, opportunistic pests and disease pressure increased and resilience to them decreased. More novel solutions were needed to manage them, and so chemical herbicides, pesticides, and insecticides such as DDT quickly became widespread. The result of all of this is what we think of today as conventional farming monocultures to extract resources from the land. In conventional viticulture, we're not only removing the grapes from the vines, but most of the living things in the system. The grass, the animals, the microbes, all of the things that would typically allow a natural system to function on its own. In order to continue harvesting fruit in conventional agriculture, all of that stuff must be replaced with more inputs. More fertilizer, more water, more pesticides, etc. At a global scale, the consequences of conventional agriculture are severe. Here's Paul Wasserman.
Farming outside of wine is existential. It feeds us. It has been feeding us for about 12,000 years. And it was supposed to feed us for perpetuity. I mean, we were supposed to live off the bounty of the planet forever. And between population growth and overusing certain resources such as water and depleting the topsoil, we are in trouble. I read a study, it's about 10 years old, and it was saying we had already used up 30% of our topsoil, and that if we continued at this pace, we would have none left in 60 years. Maybe that was alarmist, but I'm pretty sure numbers do exist in that direction. And we have a huge water crisis. We are overusing groundwater. And so we need to really think about how we farm if we're going to be able to farm for tomorrow.
Concerns were raised almost immediately about the potential consequences of this new industrial-scale agriculture for both human and environmental health. Sustainable and organic farming practices were developed in response to these concerns in order to discourage or restrict chemical inputs. Biodynamic farming was actually the first form of organic farming, based on a series of lectures by Austrian philosopher Rudolf Steiner in 1924. But more on that later. The term organic farming was first coined in 1940 in the farming manifesto Look to the Land by Walter James, which also cited Steiner's philosophies. However, the organic landscape we know today is possibly most clearly traced back to the land and farm to table movements in California of the 60s and 70s. These were the days of hippies, DDT, and the Vietnam War, where deep social and political unrest in the U.S. inspired dramatic change in everything from labor rights to Vietnam veteran vineyard communes to Alice Waters and her quietly radical Chez Panisse in Berkeley, California. The connections between farm worker labor and the advent of modern organic farming regulations are beautifully documented in Elaine Chacon Brown's recently published The Wines of California. Throughout the 60s, the insecticide DDT was used pretty brazenly, including directly on human bodies and over fields where laborers were still working. It was banned by the EPA in the US in 1972. The adverse health and environmental effects of DDT became obvious rather quickly, particularly thanks to the publication of Rachel Caron's Silent Spring. Today, glyphosate, commercially often called Roundup, is the loudest controversy and the most widely used herbicide in the world, though it is far from the only or the worst synthetic chemical spray used in farming. Its negative effects are less straightforward than the deadly DDT of the 60s, and its popularity is mostly due to its initially perceived safety. Simply put, glyphosate interferes with certain vital chemical pathways in plants and some microbes that don't exist in the animal kingdom. It wasn't until the past decade or so that research has begun to uncover glyphosate's far-reaching negative effects. Some of the most concerning potential issues involve its effect on the immune system of the plants, destruction of the microbial life in the soil, and the potential effects on our own gut microbiomes. The World Health Organization classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic in 2015. Check out Jamie Good's The New Viticulture for more details on the science of chemical herbicides and pesticides.
We have done quite a lot here, so next year it will be in Tournon.
This past summer, we took a small group of roadside insiders to the Northern Rhone to learn more about what it looks like to farm grapes in this part of the world and how the organic movement slowly made its way into this rural and rugged community. This is where we met Jean Gonon.
And now it's our daily work is everything is the vineyard, but especially tying up the vines. And we are not cutting the apex. It's why we are doing the arches. But it's just the beginning of the arches. So it's the second round of tying up, and we will make a third round in July. Okay. So it has been plowed 2 times, butage, débutage, and after we hoe on the line, and now the horse will plow again. The horse and my brother, they will come and plow again. It depends, maybe twice one now and one in middle of July, to have something more or less clean for harvest. And after harvest, we are seeding cereals or radish, or depending on the mood of the year. So the soil are a little bit decompact, even if here the soils are very light. So the rocks is not far away, but very fractable. So you've got 20 to maybe 50, 60 centimeters of this kind of soil, very sandy, and after it's the rocks. Yeah. But the rocks is fractable. It's very, they are not balanced. They are very rich in iron, in aluminium. Yeah. So we need, especially with global warming, we need to be very careful of adding organic materials during winter to maintain the life of this soil. So yes, we have built this wall during 2 winters there, and we start another one down there, step by step. Now a good year we can make 30 meters and 2 high meters. Okay. But some winter with, I don't know, more rain, or we are doing 10, 15 meters.
Wow.
So it's not the same.
The steep granitic slopes of the Rhone were a prime candidate for chemical inputs. The granitic soils are already nutrient poor, and the slopes are formidably steep. Working these vines is truly backbreaking work. Traditionally, the wines are charmingly rustic, and until recently, very inexpensive despite the grueling physical labor it takes to produce them. In hard times, affordable herbicides almost certainly saved many vineyards and livelihoods. Instead of aggressive chemical solutions to common farming issues, organic solutions look to a more natural approach, often by replacing synthetic chemicals with organic alternatives. In order to restore fertility to the soil, organic farmers use either organic fertilizers or compost in place of chemical fertilizer. Organic alternatives are offered to fight pests and harmful insects. Copper and sulfur sprays are used to fight fungal diseases such as mildew. Instead of herbicides to remove competitive and disease-prone grass and weeds, organic farmers have typically returned to the process of physically removing the weeds by plowing, tilling, or hoeing.
In S3E here we had a terrible drought and a very difficult vintage. Before that we were using herbicides and wild killers, and we wanted to stop that, so we left the grass, the natural grass, because at this time we thought that vines farming is natural, which is absolutely not. And in S3E we changed our mind completely, because we realized that we were going in a wall, doing like this, because the nitrogen level is very low in this kind of soil. So the vines were not growing a lot, less grapes, less harvest. The vines were suffering from April to August, so it was not the good way. So in S4 we changed everything, plowing, hoeing, adding compost, leaving the vines living their life like a lion. We wanted to do something more organic, but here the problem was we never traveled with my brother. We didn't go to school, and there were no examples of organic around, so we needed time. And S4 we changed everything. If we are not plowing, the grass is taking all the nitrogen, and so the vines are suffering. And now, I don't know, in 1 month it will be a little bit different, because you can leave some part where you have only some short grass, but and it will be too high after. It will be in the grapes, and if it's raining, it keeps the humidity too close. So for us, plowing, harrowing is really our thing.
I see. Yeah. Makes sense.
You know, it was like this in the old times, in the ancient times, and it was difficult for people to do it. They were working hard, and it was not for their pleasure. They realized that they can't keep the vineyard with grass.
Right. Yeah.
In the Rhone, tilling and plowing has become a sign of your commitment to your vines. Dedicated farmers chose to work their soils by hand on the steep slopes in the heat of the summer in order to resist spraying herbicides, which, honestly, on these slopes is probably still pretty hard work. In the early days, their neighbors must have thought they were completely nuts. Back in the cellar, Jean goes into more detail about how he thinks of his role as a farmer.
For us, working the soil is very important to develop the terroir mark. Okay. So at the end of winter, we start the work to plow, and after harvest, we are seeding cereals to avoid during winter the erosion and to have more life in the soil. Because here, because of the acidity of the soil, and you can't have permanent grass. Some people think that wine farming is natural and you can let them, but there is nothing natural in farming wine, especially on the slopes. Stony and very warm. So there is nothing natural, it's just a culture. And for us, the best way of farming is plowing.
When you consider the historical context of tilling, it's no wonder that some of these producers bristle at the growing popularity of no-till viticulture. I wonder if part of this is because it threatens to overlook the sacrifices this generation made to fight these chemical inputs in the first place. Because of their roles in farming history, including their important role in labor legislation in the US, it seems like the sustainable and organic farming methods and associated certifications of today are somewhat limited in their philosophical depth compared to the elaborate philosophies of biodynamics and regenerative farming. Sustainable farming is often the first step away from conventional farming, and for many, it's also the last step. Certifications for sustainable farming tend to be pretty lax. In the US, we have SIP certifications, or Sustainable in Practice, and in France, they have Lutte Raisonnée. These have some restrictions on what inputs can be used, but not many. The general goal is to reduce conventional inputs to a more sustainable level. The benefit of sustainable farming is that it has made a big difference on a large scale. Lots of people can actually do it relatively easily. However, many people don't believe it's all that different from conventional practices and are often rightly concerned about greenwashing as opposed to a commitment to making actual change. Organic certifications are significantly more serious and hold their growers to a list of strict standards. Paul Wasserman is very interested in the details of these certifications because he's equally invested in the quality of the product that he represents as he is in the day-to-day realities for the growers he works with who produce that product.
So what certified organic viticulture means, and I'm completely going to borrow from Nigel from Felton Road and Ices Ungrafted podcast episode with him, is that basically what certified organic gives you is strictly a list of what you cannot do. Contrarily to biodynamic, there's no added layer of what you should do. And what you cannot do is use GMOs or synthetic chemicals in your vineyards. Of course, there are organic replacements, especially when it comes to pesticides and fertilizers. However, when it comes to fungicides, there's nothing as efficient as copper and sulfur. So they're both allowed, but copper does have a limit. It's maximum 4 kilos per hectare per year. And the way it's accounted for is over a 7-year period. So some years you can use more, and of course, when disease pressure is lesser, you're going to use much less. as long as your average doesn't go over that. We're not here to talk about winemaking, but since everybody loves SO2, the limits on SO2 are 100 ppm for the reds and 150 for the whites. By the way, I've been talking about European regulations. I'm not educated about other countries. However, I do know that there's a difference with USDA organic certified, which actually does not allow any SO2 at all to be added to the wines, which is why most organic wines in the US simply say made with organic grapes and are not USDA organic certified. And of course, farmers do a ton more in the vineyards than use products. So you can be organic certified and you can be a brilliant, possibly regenerative farmer. You can be a really good farmer or actually not such a good farmer when it comes to the other aspects. However, is it good? Yes, absolutely. I am not qualified to speak to the physiological differences between vines that are treated conventionally or organically. However, anyone will notice a vine that is farmed with herbicides, and especially when there's no soil work at all, no cultivation at all. The soils look absolutely awful. They're gray. There's no vegetation except this weird sort of lichen moss kind of thing. The soils are absolutely compacted. When it rains, water cannot percolate, and there are huge puddles in it. It's a total disaster. So yes, it's a great start.
To get a USDA organic certification, farmers have to apply through one of many accredited certifying agents and go through what can be a costly vetting process that involves unannounced visits by the agent. The agent gets access to all offices and work areas and goes through invoices and the mandatory records of farming practices. If no forbidden materials were used, a farm can be certified organic after 3 years. Any violations restart the clock. This is an extensive bureaucratic process that often has people opting out of certifications, even if they're committed to the practice of farming organically. And despite attempts to regulate it, there is still cheating. We've all heard rumors about farmers buying forbidden pesticides off the books with cash while maintaining their certification. But a more extensive process would further increase the effort and cost for the farmers playing by the rules, and even more might opt out.
The people who want to be certified really want to offer a guarantee to the people who drink their wines. They would, first of all, really believe in not straying from organic, that's for sure. But also they do often mention, I want the people who drink my wines to have a guarantee.
Paul also mentions that particularly in the regions he works with that have very high disease pressure, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not it's fair for a grower to lose their certification in extreme years. And further discussions about the possibility of losing only that year's certification, but not having to start over with the 3-year certification process.
But there have been studies that a lutte raisonnée vineyard, but a truly lutte raisonnée, meaning very well farmed, that is not over-tilled and that has ground cover, has soils that are more alive than a certified organic or biodynamic farm that still tills, like it was the 90s.
And really, here's where terroir comes in. Your terroir will dictate what you're able to do. Conventional farming is, frankly, less impacted by terroir because by nature it aims to have full control of the system. Low fertility, add fertilizer. High disease pressure, spray it away. But, of course, control is an illusion, and terroir always rules. In reality, different terroirs put very different pressures on farmers. Here's Rodrigo Soto of Far Mountain.
I make a big separation there. And Brenna, just to be super clear, in areas like continental climates, like Burgundy, disease very, very high, pest high, fertility not a problem.
I see.
Because you get rain during the season, during the growing season. Mediterranean climates is the opposite. Disease very low, pest, depending where you are. Fertility very low. You need irrigation, and you need, in many cases, fertigation or other inputs in order to counterbalance that, because it doesn't rain through the season. So the plants are not getting enough supply, or we have not properly adapted to the growing conditions.
This means that depending on their circumstances, farming organically might be a breeze for some producers and nearly impossible for others. Here's a clip of the very first episode of Roadside Terroir, Season 1, Episode 1, where Abe Schoner describes the vineyards he works with in Southern California.
It's a land of sand, and it's a desert environment. So it's an opportunity to work with vines that are growing in a desert, but a desert that's close to the sea and benefits from everything good that comes from being close to the sea. So that's the most important thing. It's a desert terroir, and you don't have to worry about the negative aspects of growing vines in humidity or growing vines in loamy soil.
There are many advantages for vines on these sandy terroirs. Sandy soils are well-draining, and their loose structure allows roots to penetrate deep into the subsurface in search of a consistent water source. And these conditions have allowed historic old vines planted on their own roots to survive for decades, without any care or attention from the busy human beings building around them.
It's also worth saying, completely separate from the sentimental side, that the growing conditions here are fantastic, and nobody talks about that.
Here, Abe is talking about the Lopez Vineyard in Rancho Cucamonga, which he believes is one of the most significant vineyards in all of California's history. It is leased and farmed by the Galliano family, one of only 2 wineries in California that have made wine continuously since before Prohibition.
The Galliano family farms organically, and they have farmed it organically for at least 10 years. The vineyard has never had irrigation in it, but the growing conditions are so perfect that even though, of course, they get credit and praise for farming organically, it's not hard. They prune the vineyard, and several months later, they return and harvest it. There's no leafing, no shoot thinning, and no spraying sulfur in between. And so, even though nobody talks about it, it's one of the few places in California where the growing conditions are so propitious that you can farm that easily and harvest 100% healthy fruit.
For contrast, here's Edouard Vauqueret of Domaine Eleni at Edouard Vauqueret in Chablis this last spring at the La Palais Verticals tasting. In the past few years, Chablis has experienced some of the most difficult vintages in recent history.
Actually, we are working since 18, organic and biodynamic. So for me, it was, not a question. It was always our philosophy in a way. And step by step, you see the differences which appear on the soils, like the way the vines looks healthy. So it really works. Okay, for sure, sometimes it does not. 24 was a really tough vintage, really rainy. So it's also why I don't want to have a label which is written down agriculture biologique. A vintage like 24, it's really hard to manage. We sprayed 19 times. Before the blossom, I wanted to change because I was pretty sure that it's going to be rainy for the whole season. Mm-hmm. So it's why I made in between some conventional spray. Otherwise, I would have done almost nothing.
Yeah.
All the people who stayed organic in Chablis, they've done between around 5-6 hectoliters per hectare. In fact, we are talking about economically speaking.
Yeah.
I was not able to pass through 5 hectoliters per hectare. And so it's why I switched to a couple of conventional spray.
Yeah.
And we were able to make between 18 and 19 hectoliters per hectare. And the people which I work with, they know my philosophy and they know why I don't want to get any label, like organic label. So I'm doing it mostly for me, like I said, and the team and the environment and stuff. And 24 was a good example. If the doctor tells you that you have a cancer, and the only cure, it's to use a plant, homeopathy, so maybe you won't pass through the cancer. You need a real cure. It was a bit like this for 24. if you were keeping organic, you were able to make 4, 5, 6 hectoliters per hectare.
Yeah.
I choose to switch to some conventional spray. I was able to make 19, 18, 19.
Yeah.
So it works.
Yeah.
But hope that next year I'm gonna be back in organic 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. But these discrepancies also exist on smaller scales. This summer in the Rhône, we also visited with the exuberant Maxime Graillot of Domaine Hélène Graillot in Crozes Hermitage. They've been organic since the start of the domaine in 1985, but Maxime insisted that this was a no-brainer. The relatively flat, well-draining, cobbly soils of Crozes and the dry growing conditions have made organic farming much easier here than for his precariously perched neighbors across the river. Farming for terroir also means that the realities of farming might differ dramatically from place to place. The copper and sulfur sprays allowed against mildew work well in fighting diseases when applied, but they wash off. So rainy years or regions will require much more spraying, sometimes 10 times more than their sustainable neighbors. That's a lot of work, potentially a lot of copper in the environment, and definitely a lot of tractor hours. The consequences of these additional sprays will also differ depending on the terroir. The heavy clay soils of Burgundy are much more likely to get severely damaged by compaction than sandy soil in the Rhône, for example. The realities of organic farming are still things many farmers are coming to terms with, even if it's increasingly more and more common with the younger generations coming onto the scene. In Season 2, we spoke to Camille Thirier of Domaine Camille Thirier in the Côte de Nuit, Burgundy. She's one of the hardest working young farmers we know, making some of the most beautiful wines alongside her partner, Matt Chiddick.
Even if it's getting more expensive in every single appellation, the quality of the wines are increasing because we are all trying to do better and to find new ways of working our vineyards to make them more healthy. You know, like a lot of people now are finally figuring out that it's important to work organically. For us, our generation, it's the base, but for a little bit older generation, sometimes it's not that easy to accept. I had some talk not long time ago with winemaker about 60 years old, and they were telling me, guys, young people like you, why you all want to work organically your vineyard? Seriously, like for the spraying this year, how many have you done? I'm like, yeah, about a lot, you know. I was like, I did like 5. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, but what you put on your grapes, you know, it's if you did only 5, it talks by itself. It's super powerful what you did, right? So it's a different mentality, but also I respect them a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Things are changing.
Yeah,
slowly. Even though it's a popular topic to discuss, especially among the younger generation of passionate growers, organic farming is still surprisingly rare. Certified organic vineyards represent just a tiny fraction of the vineyards that are farmed around the world. In terms of global agriculture, only about 2.1% of agricultural surface area is certified organic. And as of 2019, only 6.2% of vineyards worldwide were certified organic, though this number has likely grown in the past 6 years. Today, Spain, France, Italy, and Austria are leading the charge in organic viticulture, with 25% of Austria's vineyard area certified organic. The US is dragging in comparison, and as of October 2024, only 4% of California vineyards were certified organic according to the CCOF.
Ouais, ça c'est le plus jeune, it's the youngest.
Ah, bon.
The bravest.
The bravest.
Hein? Le plus courageux?
Non.
Non. Yeah, we are 21 in total.
Okay.
So yeah, so,
In most cases, farming a vineyard organically is hard work. In some cases, such as here with Jean Gonon, it's extremely hard work. As we continue walking through his old vines, Jean points out the intricate process involved in tying up the shoots. Like many other producers we've talked to, he doesn't cut the apex of the vine and instead carefully braids the branches high up on their stakes. Unfortunately, most years, several members of his team quit as the work intensifies and the weather heats up. making the job that much harder for those who remain.
Ouais.
And what are these reeds?
Ça c'est du jonc. So it's the traditional way to tying up. It's not with strings. It's with, because this it's better than strings because you never cut the branches when they are very young, and very tender.
Yeah.
So, but you have to learn how to do it.
How to tie.
So it's a question of learning.
Yeah. And what is the material?
Jonc. So it's a grass near the rivers or near the sea. And after we are doing with this. And when we are like this, when we are pruning in winter, you don't have to cut it.
Right.
You just poof and it's
Okay.
Rush or bulrush.
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 It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and long. So people, and it's why for the young people it's a little bit difficult now because they want everything very quick and very easy. And now you have to learn to do it properly, slowly, but well done. And sometimes, it's difficult. So the first round, it's quite easier, so people are okay. Second round, the heat is coming. Some people are leaving. I hope not. Not this year.
Yeah.
Fatigué. So we like this place because it's very calm. Here it's calm, especially on the afternoon when nobody's talking because it's so,
peaceful.
No, it's good. We like this place. It's like a little garden, in fact.
Yeah, it feels like a secret garden.
Thank you for listening to Roadside Terroir. This has been part 2 of our series on farming philosophies. We'll continue with part 3, biodynamics, on October 31st. Spooky, spooky. In the meantime, we'll be back with a special episode on how to taste for terroir in just 2 weeks. That's October 17th.
Everything is up for interpretation, but basically, for me, organic farming is the same strategy of conventional farming with organic products, which I think is a great achievement. Now, biodynamic farming, in my opinion, is a very different strategy.
This episode has been brought to you thanks to the wonderful team at Becky Wasserman & Company. Thank you all so much for your support and everything you do to encourage pushing the boundaries of thoughtful farming throughout our industry. Thank you to our guests, Jean Gonon and Paul Wasserman. And for the additional commentary by Michelle Chappelle, Rodrigo Soto, Abe Schoner, Edouard Vauqueret, and Camille Thierrier. We have lots of resources that we utilized for this episode, particularly Jamie Good's The New Viticulture and The Wines of California by Elaine Chacon Brown. We'll link to all of our sources in the show notes and on the episode 5 page of our website. If you're enjoying this season, we would love to hear from you. Send us a message, or even better, give us a rating or a comment on your chosen streaming platform. And don't forget to tell your friends. If you want to support the show, please consider becoming a Roadside Insider or donating to help keep the farming content coming. You can find out about all of these options and more at our website, roadsideterroir.com. As always, an extra big thanks to our Grand Cru patrons, Stephen and Amy Lippin. Thank you. Roadside Terroir is hosted and produced by me, Brenna Quigley, with writing and research support by Paul Knittel. Sound engineering, original music, and sound design by Jeff Alvarez. Thank you to Oatcoat, Claire Shaheen, Isa Islami, Michelle Jolie, and everyone else who helped make this episode a reality.
Guys, I'm sorry. We
On y va!
in the bus. So as we are being dropped off at the estate,
On y va!
Jean-Philippe's going to buy some more water. Okay.
Okay, and I'll leave this on you, but I'll turn it
It's
off.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not listening to you.
So I can say bad things
Yes.
and
Yes.
about Americans
About-
coming,
About-
disturbing the work.
Nothing you can say that we don't know.
Yes, she knows everything. Oh, see you.
Sí, a
See you.
bientôt.